You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not confused. You are being slowly erased. Not in some dramatic way. No blood, no collapse. Your body still wakes up, eats, works, scrolls, sleeps. From the outside, everything looks fine. But something essential inside you is being pressed down, muted, trained to stay small. The sharp part, the honest part. The part that knows exactly what it wants, but learned, very early, not to say it out loud. It happens quietly. One compromise at a time. One polite laugh you didn't mean. One, sure, that's fine, when it wasn't. One decision made to avoid tension instead of build truth. You don't notice the damage at first because it doesn't feel like pain. It feels like being reasonable, mature, good. And that is how it gets you. From the moment you could speak, you were surrounded by invisible judges, parents, teachers, friends, society, an endless jury with opinions about who you should be, what you should want, how fast you should move, how loudly you should live. They didn't need to threaten you. They just needed to withhold approval. And you learned the rule fast: belong or be alone. So, you adapted. You bent. You edited yourself. You learned how to read the room before reading your own instincts. You became excellent at sensing what was expected of you and delivering it. That skill kept you safe. It also put a leash around your neck. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not living their lives. They are performing them. They wake up already checking the temperature of the world. Is this acceptable? Will this be approved? How will this look? They don't choose paths. They negotiate them. They don't act. They seek permission. And slowly, without realizing it, they trade their inner authority for social comfort. You can hear it in the language. I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to seem selfish. I don't want people to think badly of me. Notice what's missing. What do you think? What do you want? Those questions feel dangerous now. Not because they are wrong, but because you've been trained to distrust them. You were taught that goodness means agreement, that virtue means self-sacrifice, that being a good person requires you to place yourself second. Always second. That belief sounds noble. It also creates servants. This is where Machiavelli becomes relevant, not as a villain, but as a surgeon. He did not write to make people cruel. He wrote to make them lucid. He looked at human behavior without flinching and said what most people are afraid to admit. A person who cannot govern themselves will be governed by others. There is no neutrality inside the mind. No democracy. Either you rule your inner world, or someone else will happily do it for you. When you live for approval, you are ruled by fear. Fear of silence, fear of judgment, fear of exclusion. And fear is an efficient master. It will keep you working jobs you hate, staying in relationships that shrink you, tolerating disrespect you would never accept if you trusted yourself. The tragedy is that you often call this morality. You think being agreeable makes you good. You think endurance equals virtue. You think if you keep giving, keep understanding, keep absorbing discomfort, eventually someone will notice and reward you. They won't. Not because people are evil, but because human nature responds to boundaries, not sacrifice. When you consistently place yourself last, you don't inspire gratitude. You train expectation. You become predictable, useful, easy to lean on, easy to ignore. Like a bridge everyone crosses, but no one thanks. Machiavelli warned about this exact pattern. A person who tries to be good in all circumstances, surrounded by people who are not, does not survive intact. They are not admired. They are consumed. Think about your own life. How many times did you say yes when you wanted to say no? How many times did that earn you respect, real respect, not polite words? How many times did it simply become the new baseline? Every time you suppress yourself to keep peace, you teach others how to treat you. You teach them that your limits are flexible, your time is cheap, your needs are negotiable. You teach them that you are a resource, not a force. This is not kindness. This is self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. Living for yourself does not mean becoming hostile. It does not mean exploiting people or turning cold for sport. It means ending the habit of being harmless. It means understanding that goodness without strength is submission, and submission always attracts those who benefit from it. Picture a man walking into a storm holding an umbrella made of paper. He believes he is prepared because he brought something gentle. The storm does not care. The paper dissolves. The man is soaked, confused, and offended that reality didn't reward his intentions. Your kindness has been paper. What Machiavelli offers is not cruelty, but structure, a spine behind the softness, a center that does not move just because someone frowns, the ability to say no without explanation, the capacity to be disliked without collapsing. This is the first psychological shift. Stop measuring your worth by reaction. Stop outsourcing your sense of self to the audience in your head. That audience is not invested in your life. They are distracted by their own. The moment you stop performing, something unsettling happens. The silence appears. No applause, no reassurance. Just you, standing without feedback. That silence is not emptiness. It is the space where sovereignty begins. Most people run from it. You are going to learn how to stand inside it, and that is where the real work starts. The silence feels hostile. At first. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop volunteering justifications for every choice, when you stop cushioning your truth to make it digestible, the world does not applaud. It pauses. People lean back. They squint. Something in you has changed, and they can feel it even if they can't name it. This is where most people panic and retreat. They mistake discomfort for danger. They rush to fill the gap with words, with apologies, with over-clarification. They reopen the door they just closed because the quiet made them anxious. But Machiavelli understood something crucial. Silence is not a void. It is pressure. You have lived your entire life inside a mental theater. In that theater, the seats are filled with everyone you've ever known. Parents, friends, ex-partners, colleagues, strangers, society itself. And before every major decision, you glance at the crowd. You imagine their reactions, the applause, the boos, the whispers. Should I take this risk? Check the audience. Should I speak my mind? Check the audience. Should I walk away? Check the audience. This is not awareness. This is captivity. Machiavelli's insight was brutally simple. Reputation is a tool, not a master. A prince manages perception strategically. He does not need it emotionally. There is a difference between shaping how you are seen and needing to be seen favorably in order to feel stable. Needing validation makes you reactive. You hope. You anticipate. You adjust yourself in advance. You are always one step behind the room. Managing perception is calculated. You choose when to speak, when to be silent, when to appear strong, when to withdraw. You act first, then allow perception to form around the result. The moment you need approval, you surrender leverage. Here is the truth most people never confront. The audience you fear is not watching you nearly as much as you imagine. They are absorbed in their own performance, their own insecurities, their own silent negotiations for approval. You are a background character in their story, And even when they are judging you, what is actually happening? An opinion forms. A fleeting electrical signal fires in someone else's brain. Chemicals shift. A thought appears. Then it dissolves. That thought cannot touch your body. It cannot drain your bank account. It cannot steal your future unless you invite it inside and let it sit at the table. Why are you letting a reaction inside someone else's skull dictate the direction of your life? Machiavelli's answer was not anger. It was contempt, but not the loud, emotional kind. The cold kind. The kind that looks at a barking dog and does not bark back. The kind that understands noise as information, not instruction. When you live for yourself, other people's opinions become weather. You notice them. You adapt if necessary, but you do not argue with the sky. You keep moving. This is the second shift. Fire the audience. Not in rebellion, not in rage, in indifference. You become the only spectator in your theater. You write the script. You perform it. You critique it. If you respect what you see, the absence of applause loses its power. This is where Machiavelli's most misquoted idea enters, and most people misunderstand it completely. It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. This was never about terror. It was about reliability. Love, in social terms, is conditional. It survives as long as it is convenient. It breaks the moment obligation becomes uncomfortable. Respect, the modern equivalent of fear, creates consistency. People adjust their behavior around you because there are consequences. In today's world, fear translates to boundaries. Most people choose likability. They want to be easy, approachable, chill. They think this makes them safe. In reality, it makes them malleable, a liquid poured into whatever container the environment provides. And people do not respect liquid. They consume it or spill it. Respect comes from edges, from standards that do not bend just to maintain harmony. From the quiet knowledge that you are capable of walking away, and will. Think about the people you respect most. Are they endlessly agreeable? Do they over-explain? Do they apologize for existing? No. They are difficult sometimes, clear, grounded, selective. Their approval feels valuable because it is rare. Their time feels meaningful because it is guarded. Their presence feels earned. This is the paradox. When you stop living for others, people begin to feel you more intensely, not because you demand attention, but because you are no longer chasing it. Dislike becomes data, a signal that you have defined yourself, that you have occupied space, that you refused to move when someone else was uncomfortable. That is power. But this power demands discipline, especially with your mouth. One of the fastest ways people give away authority is through oversharing. You announce plans too early. You explain dreams to people who have not earned access. You vent to those invested in keeping you small. Every time you do this, you hand out veto power. You feel relief when you talk because your brain rewards disclosure with dopamine. It feels like progress. It is not. It is leakage. Your energy drains into conversation instead of construction. Machiavelli understood this. A prince does not reveal his full design until the move is already complete, not because secrecy is evil, but because premature exposure invites sabotage, often disguised as concern. This is the third shift: strategic silence. Build in the dark. Protect ideas while they are fragile. Let results speak instead of explanations. When you stop asking, "What do you think?" you are forced to ask, "What do I think?" And that question is terrifying because it removes the safety net. But that void, the place where validation used to live, is where you meet yourself. And once you do, you cannot go back. This is only the beginning. Once you stop explaining, another illusion collapses. Loyalty. You begin to notice who stays when you no longer overgive, who listens when you stop performing, who respects you when you stop cushioning their discomfort. This is where the real audit begins, and it is not sentimental. Machiavelli wrote extensively about armies, but he was never only talking about soldiers. He was talking about structure, about dependence, about who stands with you when conditions change. He warned against mercenaries, those who fight for pay, convenience, or proximity to advantage. In peace, they drain you. In conflict, they vanish. Look at your life through that lens. Who is present only when you are useful? Who calls when they need something but disappears when you need space? Who supports you as long as your ambition doesn't threaten their comfort? These are not villains. They are simply aligned with themselves. The mistake is expecting loyalty where there was never shared purpose. Living for yourself requires a brutal clarity about alliances. And this is where most people fail, because clarity hurts more than confusion. Confusion lets you pretend. Clarity forces action. You hold on to people because of history, years, memories, shared pain, shared laughter. You tell yourself it means something. Machiavelli would ask a cold question. Does history win battles? No. Strategy does. Strength does. Alignment does. If you are trying to build a new life, you cannot keep the old architects on the payroll. Some people were only meant to know a former version of you. Keeping them close out of guilt is not loyalty. It is sabotage. This is not about cutting everyone off. It is about refusing to be emotionally subsidized by those who drain you. Surgery, by definition, involves cutting. It is precise, necessary, painful, and it saves the body. When you begin to live for yourself, your tolerance changes. You stop laughing at disrespect. You stop engaging in gossip. You stop explaining your boundaries, and people notice immediately. They will say, "You've changed." They will not say it as praise. They will say it like an accusation, because your growth destabilizes the role they assigned you. You were the listener, the helper, the buffer, the one who absorbed tension so others didn't have to. When you step out of that role, the system reacts. Your response must be silence, not defensiveness, not justification. Silence, because they are right. You have changed. You are no longer available to be used as emotional infrastructure for other people's unresolved lives. Machiavelli advised a ruler to rely on what is his own, not on what belongs to others. Psychologically, this means emotional self-sufficiency. You stop outsourcing stability. You stop needing agreement to proceed. You stop negotiating your path with people who will not walk it with you. This often leads to isolation. And here is where fear resurfaces. You were trained to see isolation as punishment, as failure, as evidence that something is wrong with you. But isolation is not always exile. Sometimes it is filtration. When the noise leaves, space appears, and in that space, something rare happens. Your internal voice gets louder. Most people would rather sit in a warm room filled with quiet resentment than stand alone in the cold with their dignity intact. The warmth feels like belonging. It is decay. Cold preserves. This is the fourth shift. Emotional independence. You stop stealing from your future self to pay off the debts of your present insecurity. You stop spending time you will never get back on obligations that do not move your life forward. Time is the one resource no one can return to you. Money can be regained. Status can be rebuilt. Relationships can be reformed. Time, once spent, dissolves permanently. When you live for others, time leaks everywhere. Hours listening to problems that will never be solved. Weekends spent at events you dread. Years inside careers chosen to meet expectations instead of purpose. This is not kindness. It is slow suicide. To live for yourself, you must become ruthless with time. Ruthless does not mean cruel. It means regret-free. You learn to say no without guilt. No to favors that drain you. No to conversations that go nowhere. No to access that yields nothing but exhaustion. You do not need to be loud about it. You do not need to explain. You become unavailable. A prince does not open the castle gates to everyone who knocks, not because he is arrogant, but because a kingdom without walls collapses. Your attention is a kingdom. Why is your gate wide open? Every notification, every message, every demand for reaction. People walking into your mind and looting your focus because you never decided it was valuable. Scarcity creates value. Abundance creates disposability. When you are always available, you are cheap. When you are selective, your presence carries weight. When you disappear from places that disrespect your time, those places reveal how little they valued you. This is the inversion. When you live for others, you fear being left. When you live for yourself, others fear losing access to you. Not because you threaten them, but because you no longer need them. This is where guilt tries one last time to reclaim control. It whispers that you are selfish, cold, difficult. It reminds you of expectations, roles, promises made by a version of you that no longer exists. Let the guilt speak. Do not obey it. It is the echo of an old identity dying. You are not becoming less human. You are becoming deliberate. And once time, energy, and alliances are secured, something deeper awakens. Responsibility. Because when you stop blaming expectations, parents, partners, or society, there is nowhere left to hide. If you fail now, it is on you. No excuses, no audience to blame. That weight is terrifying. It is also the weight of the crown. And once you feel it, you understand why so few people ever choose it. But you are past the point of comfort now. What comes next is power. When responsibility becomes yours alone, the mind searches for somewhere to escape. This is the stage where many people sabotage themselves. Not because the path is unclear, but because clarity removes alibis. When you were living for others, failure had somewhere to land. Your parents didn't support you. Your partner didn't understand. Society made it hard. The rules were unfair. Those explanations were cages, but they were comfortable cages. Now the door is open, and open space terrifies people who are trained to live inside walls. Machiavelli understood this stage intimately. He wrote The Prince while isolated, disgraced, removed from power, stripped of status. By all external measures, he had lost. No audience, no position, no validation. Just silence, dirt under his nails, and long nights alone with his thoughts. And instead of begging to be reaccepted, he did something radical. He used the silence. Each night, after working the land like a nobody, he would return to his study, remove his soiled clothes, and dress as if he were entering a royal court. Not for others, for himself. Then he would sit and converse with the great minds of history. He did not wait for permission to matter again. He acted as if he already did. That is the fifth shift. Internal authority. You stop waiting for life to acknowledge you before you commit to yourself. You stop asking for signals. You stop negotiating your effort based on external response. You move because the move is necessary, not because it will be applauded. This is where your behavior changes in subtle but powerful ways. You train not to impress, but to sharpen. You learn not for credentials, but for leverage. You create not for likes, but because something inside you demands expression. The motivation is no longer social. It is existential. You begin to feel a quiet pressure inside, a sense that your life is finite, that time is not abstract anymore. The clock becomes audible, and instead of panicking, you focus. Living for yourself means realizing you are on a death timeline. Every yes is a trade. Every distraction is a theft. Every delay has a cost. When you let others hold your hourglass, they spend your sand on their comfort. Taking it back feels ruthless because you are conditioned to equate availability with virtue. But virtue without direction is noise. Purpose requires exclusion. This is why Machiavelli spoke so obsessively about timing. Not speed. Timing. The right moment. The right move. The right restraint. Most people are busy. Very few are deliberate. You stop rushing to respond. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop announcing intentions prematurely. Silence becomes your default, not as avoidance, but as preparation. In that silence, something critical happens. Your emotional regulation deepens. You feel anger, fear, excitement, but you no longer broadcast it. You experience emotions without surrendering control to them. This is not suppression. It is command. The person who can remain composed while others spiral gains gravity. People begin to watch you differently, not because you dominate, but because you are not easily moved. Machiavelli understood that unregulated emotion is exploitable. A man who reacts instantly can be steered. A man who pauses cannot. This is the sixth shift. Emotional sovereignty. You stop bleeding in public. You stop turning every feeling into a confession. You choose when and where vulnerability is earned, not demanded. Your inner world becomes guarded territory. And as your internal order strengthens, an external effect appears almost accidentally. People treat you with more respect, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior now signals standards. You speak less. Your words land harder. You are absent more. Your presence feels heavier. You do not chase. Others adjust. This is not manipulation. It is alignment. The irony Machiavelli understood, and most people never do, is that when you stop living for others, you actually become more capable of giving. The person who lives for approval gives with resentment. Their kindness carries expectations. Their generosity keeps score. Their silence hides anger. The person who lives for themselves gives freely. They choose. They are full. Their generosity is clean because it is not a currency. A pillar does not wrap itself around others. It supports because it is stable. A vine clings, constricts, and eventually suffocates what it depends on. You are becoming the pillar. This stage feels lonely because dependency is falling away. But loneliness here is not absence, it is recalibration. You are shedding roles that required you to be smaller than your capacity. And something inside you knows it. The need to be liked is quieter now. Not gone, but weakened. You can feel it try to rise, and you can let it pass without obeying it. That restraint is strength. You are no longer asking, "How do I look?" You are asking, "Is this true? Is this aligned? Is this worth my time?" Those questions change everything. You are no longer preparing to survive. You are preparing to build. And once that orientation locks in, the final transformation begins. Not externally, internally. Where fear gives way to will. At some point, fear stops arguing with you, not because it disappears, but because it realizes it no longer has authority. It still speaks, but its voice is smaller now. It no longer decides. And in that quiet shift, something rare is born. Will. Machiavelli called it virtù. Not virtue in the moral sense. Not goodness. Not obedience. Virtù is capacity. Force. The ability to impose direction on chaos. The internal strength to look at uncertainty, resistance, and risk and say, I will shape this anyway. This is where living for yourself becomes irreversible. You stop saying, I can't because they won't like it. You stop saying, I can't because society expects something else. You stop saying, I can't because it's risky. You realize the truth that ends all excuses. The only thing that ever stopped you was hesitation disguised as morality. Blaming others was comfortable. It kept failure hypothetical. It protected your ego, but it also kept you small. When you remove the blame, you inherit the full weight of authorship. If you succeed, it is yours. If you fail, it is also yours. That weight is heavy, and it is sacred. This is the moment most people turn back. They choose familiar chains over uncertain freedom. They return to performance, to approval, to noise, to the comfort of being told who they are. You do not, because now you understand the final paradox Machiavelli saw clearly. A person who needs nothing from others cannot be controlled by others. If you don't need their money, they can't buy you. If you don't need their love, they can't manipulate you. If you don't need their validation, they can't shame you. You become a glitch in the system of social conditioning, not rebellious, independent, unhooked. And here is the part few admit. By living for yourself, you become better for the world. The person who lives to please becomes resentful. Their kindness rots. Their generosity carries invisible invoices. Their silence fills with bitterness. But the person who lives from self-command gives without poison. When they help, it is because they choose to. When they love, it is from abundance, not need. When they lead, it is from clarity, not insecurity. They are stable, and stability is rare. Your children do not need you to be nice. They need you to be strong. Your partner does not need you to be agreeable. They need you to be real. The world does not need another obedient echo. It needs grounded individuals who can stand without leaning. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must rely on his own arms. Psychologically, this means self-trust, inner discipline, the refusal to collapse when applause disappears. You have been taught that living for yourself is selfish. It is not. It is the only way to stop lying, the only way to end hollow yeses, the only way to kill the resentment that poisons relationships quietly over time. Truth, even when cold, holds weight, and weight builds structures that last. So now the question is simple. When this ends, when the algorithm offers distraction, noise, comfort, what will you do? Will you rush back into performance? Will you reopen the mental theater? Will you ask the audience what comes next? Or will you sit in the silence? Will you look at your time, your energy, your relationships, your ambitions, and ask the only question that matters? Do I serve this, or does this serve me? The door has always been open. What kept you inside was the belief that freedom meant emptiness. It doesn't. It means reality. Machiavelli stepped into that reality 5 centuries ago, alone, misunderstood, unapplauded, and he left behind a map, not for ruling others, but for ruling yourself. The step is small, the cost is real, the reward is sovereignty. You must be willing to be disliked, misunderstood, unapproved. You must be willing to live, and once you are, you will realize something quietly, permanently true. You were never meant to belong to everyone. You were meant to belong to yourself.